Yeah. Assalamu alaikum everyone. First of all, I'm really sorry. The session was intended to happen on Saturday, but unfortunately, due to some technical reasons, we postponed it. And now I'm recording with my some of clan members for you, and they are representing you here. And in the end of session, they will be doing some queries on behalf of you. And if still you will find anything confusing or you will have any query, you can ask me in obviously in the comment section, or you may contact me on LinkedIn. So let's start our session. The topic for our session is to design how we can design an API design at scale level. So first, let's discuss about that what exactly the API means. As we know that everyone may know about the server and client side architecture. The client is obviously on the browser side. It requests to the server, which is 24/7 running and listening towards the request, which is coming from client side. So server answers that request in the form of response, and maybe it can be serverless, by the way, but it is a different topic. But servers is responsible for responding the request. So the actual API mean is like it stands for application programming interface. It means that we are creating some logics, some type of programs which will provide the capability to our browser to contact with our server. Okay, so that means that we are providing some bridging type of facility, which we will be writing some codes into our backend side, server side, which will allow the client to request towards the server, and then that server, that API, basically that rules which we wrote into the backend, that will be answering and sending a response back to the client side. Okay. So let's start our session. This session is, by the way, of level 1. But in start we will discuss some basic type of topics, and after that we will move some intermediate topics, and then one or two of like advanced type. But uh, this topic is so broad, and we can discuss a lot of things in that. But for this session we will try to make it concise and to learn more from these topics. Okay, so let's start it. My name is Omar, and I'm a software engineer and around 3 years of experience into industry. And nowadays I'm learning AI engineering and working in AI engineering. So we will be discussing about how we can create best a best API which can scale and deliver and handle the like thousands or even millions of requests. So that means that if you have any type of thinking which mainly some kind of students have, that AI is replacing everyone. So here I want to add something. If you are an engineer and you are thinking from the engineering side and you are creating your backend from that perspective, in mind that I'm designing a backend or API for the thousands or thousands and millions and some, like a huge amount of users will come on that API, and you need to design that API for a huge amount of traffic. So the concept that you will be following is really different from AI. So that is all what we are trying to make ourselves. So let's start our presentation, our session. So today's plan include, first of all, to discuss about the REST foundations, and then how we can design API that according to the industry standards. And then the third topic is evolving and scaling, like how we can decide that which API type strategy we can use to create our APIs, like REST or GraphQL, that kind of thing. And then obviously we have to make our APIs, we have to make our backend that capable to handle huge amount of users. So we will all discussing about some kind of stuff which will help us to make our backend and like API more powerful. So in the end, fourth, we will be discussing about the open API kind of stuff, to which industries basically focus, uh, and that are basically the industry standards which they are following. So let's start with the REST. A REST API is an architecture, by the way. It is not some kind of framework or any library, or if you may listen about, like it's a language something type. But a REST API is a type of an API, is an architecture style for building the web services that allows different software applications to communicate with each other over the internet. Like the main concept of API is that to provide that bridge, and it is some kind of like architecture to follow for to create that best API. So REST is a way to design APIs where everything is treated as a resource. Now we will look out what the actually means of resource, and we will discussing about the actual fundamentals and the rules that follows into the industries to make that REST APIs. So REST stands for, by the way, representational state transfer. It also relies on client server model, where client is like maybe a mobile application or a browser side, which request towards the backend, or obviously API, and the server response back towards client. The workflow follow three steps basically. Client send request, the client target a unique web URL. And now you may have idea about the URLs and endpoints. So these three steps basically follows in our REST framework. The client send a request towards a unique URL, and every URL, there is a logic behind that URL which runs into the backend, and then server process that logic into our server, and then it respond back towards our client, and client obviously accept the response and manage accordingly. So this is, by the way, three steps which mainly used into the REST framework. So uh, Richardson majority model is which was introduced into the 2008. There are basically four levels, like how you can create a simple API into the REST, and which rules you can follow. So according to that, Richardson divided REST into the four levels. In simple single zero level, we have a single endpoint. Now, let me just tell you that exactly if you are confusing about what's the endpoint is. So when I search, for example, the facebook.com, it is exactly the one URL. And then when I add something in front of it, like API, V1, and users, for example, let's suppose we are just supposing, then it is our complete URL, and we are saying our endpoint to it, like API v1 user is an endpoint which is basically handled from our server in API case, and it complete has a complete logic behind a server which is written by obviously the developer side, and that logic will run on that endpoint. Okay, so in level one, uh, we have single endpoint. And in level one, we have single endpoint, and that endpoint is dealing with all the methods. So maybe we should first discuss about some methods, but let's have an image into our mind that what's actually happening in level zero is that a single endpoint is dealing with all the methods, even if it is a get method or post method, any method. And even for example, a URL is like this users. So now this URL will be handling all the kind of stuff like getting all the users, or maybe if you want to delete some user, you will also sending the request toward this URL with some kind of different payload and bodies that we will discuss about that, what's the actually that is. But you have an image into the mind that single endpoint is dealing all this stuff, and these are not, by the way, using into the current advanced industries, but these are actually used into our legacy systems. So we should know about that kind of stuff. So in levels one, Richardson say that we need to divide our endpoints according to the resources. So let's suppose what it is saying that the resources actually is like the namespace. For example, if we have different kind of modules in our API, let's suppose we are designing an API for Facebook. So Facebook have different kind of modules. We have we have module of users, we have modules of posts, we have modules of messages. So level one says that you have divided all the endpoints according to the resources. For example, let's suppose the resources, the all the business logics behind the users, according to the users, resources will divide into uh, slash users. Okay. One more thing, it says that the resources will be written in the form of not in singular but in plural form. So this endpoint will deal users side users type of business logics. Then for posts, this endpoint, we are just assuming we will do all the practical, but let's suppose this endpoint will be handling the resources, and up to so on, all kind of stuff. Like every module have different uh, endpoints. So, and level two, which is basically currently using by almost every REST APIs. It introduced about the methods get, post, put, delete, and meaningful some code which we will discuss in detail, by the way. So in level three, it is some kind of stuff like let me just give you, if I have some code to show you about what's the actual meaning of the actions, or let's use this. So in level four, what he's saying that in level four, you will be using the responses, including the hypermedia control. Let's suppose if you are requesting a single URL, and that URL will be deciding that what next you will be doing. The response what that URL will be sending will, for let's suppose it will be in JSON, it will include some kind of thing. Okay, what next are you gonna hit, and that is known as the action. Actually, the what action are you gonna do? For example, this URL, we hit this URL, and now in the response of this URL hitting, we got back that now next you need to hit the user's endpoint. So that kind of stuff majorly introduced into the level four. By the way, this is not actually using a lot into the industry, but we should have these all concepts into our mind. Maybe we have done with our some boring kind of theory. Now let's get into some practical side. So now a client is sending request towards the backend. Now we should have picture into the mind what actually is sending from client side to the backend. So a request which client is sending, it has not a lot of like thing you can just assume in your mind we are using HTTP 1.1. Let's suppose we are using an HTTP 1.1. What happened into this HTTP 1.1? Uh, a simple text, a simple, very simple text sent from client side to the uh, server side, and that protocol written into that protocol means the rules are into the HTTP decided what exactly the text is coming and then divide it into the different kind of stuff, and that we will discuss about like methods, path and variance, etc. Like host, etc. these are these all are sending as a single text, and the HTTP will be dividing all that kind of stuff for our backend side. So what exactly the method means? So in REST we have four like we have different kind of methods, but the majorly we use these five methods. So again, as we discussed that we are just sending the text from client to the backend, but still we have these methods. And one thing that we should have into our mind that these methods don't mean that we cannot change the like the working of these methods. All are upon we can change, but the thing is these are all written according to the REST principles, so we should consider them and to follow these to make our API more scalable and to make that usable to others. So these four different methods which mainly treat into the uh, our REST framework, REST API. So these five methods. Now let's have an example with some code. Uh, now I just created a simple Node.js server, and I have different type of method which I'm dealing here. So let's suppose first thing what I did is distribute my modules for better structuring. So now here is a very simple, very basic routes and very basic all the backend. So here I have methods explaining here. So the get method, first we will be discussing about the get method. In REST APIs, get method is used to whenever the client wants to get something from backend. Client is sending nothing as a body. Client is sending nothing any kind of like demands. It is just saying that give me some data. It may be related to any resource. So let's suppose if we are talking about the resource users, so client may be saying to the server that just give me the users data. So I have here the get request. Uh, the keyword is saying that it is, by the way, in according to the different frameworks in which we are, in which we create the API and backend, these methods are same. We will deal everything same, just the syntax will be different. So in get method, what we just studied that get method will just sending back the required data from the client side. So let's suppose this endpoint is, by the way, slash. This endpoint is, by the way, the products. Yeah, the URL behind that, and then the products. it is just saying from basically why we are studying these kind of stuff. We are we are having structure into our we are designing the rules into our mind that whenever we are gonna create any API, we need to follow these rules for an industry standard, that whenever the client or any other third party wants to use your API, then the rules should be same. So this is the endpoint slash products, and we are saying that just get the products from the database. Here I'm just assuming these products is coming from the database, and I'm just returning nothing else. I'm not doing anything else. So let's hit it. Uh, I will be using API dog for that. Let's let's first run our. So our server is now running on port 3001. So uh, we have to write our URL, and then to endpoint. Let's just copy paste the endpoint, by the way. Just ignore this thing. Now we are targeting our URL localhost 3.1, and just adding the endpoint and resource. So we decided that what actually the URL should look like. We have all the controls on our code base. We can change it to we can as I said that these are all the rules, not the kind of like if we change these to products to like, just giving you an example. Let's suppose here. Okay, I'm not using, by the way, anywhere. I'm just getting the products routes, and I'm redirecting them towards the products. So I was discussing about like we can do it that use the singular product. The resource name is singular. Nothing will be changed. Like if I hit this, I will be getting the response, and the response is very fine, what we were looking for. But we have studied that according to the rules of REST, we will be defining our resources into plural form. So that's why I'm using the products here. So now just adding the plural. So we just hit and get request towards the backend, and we are getting back. Let's suppose it is the front end for the very beginners. Let's suppose it is the front end. We are using a software to requesting towards the backend and getting the response back. So we hit that URL, this endpoint, and getting back just the products. For example, let's go from the database. So now let's coming toward our second method, which is post. So in REST framework, the post method is used to uh, create any new resource. Uh, we can have an example with user by the or we can use the same products example. Let's suppose the resources of products, and we want to create a new product into the database. So we can use put request a put method, we can use patch method, we can use get method. But the thing is here, we are following a rules, so we will according to the industry standards, we will be using the post request. So let's go and watch how can we request the post, and the product will be creating on the post request. So here is the post request, the same URL, just what we are doing, we are changing the method of requesting. By the way, if any one of you are on the very beginner level and have the confusion on your mind that from front end, how will we be doing from front end, that all stuff, then don't be worried, because if you will be having, you have already all any like different type of libraries and this stuff which will be handling this kind of thing from just 1 to 3 of lines, that you will doing all the same which we are doing here. Okay, now just I'm changing the method of the same endpoint, and I'm saying that I need to uh, create now a new resource. The resource is products. So when I hit it, it is showing me some error. So you can have a view here. What's it is red. So we will discuss about that. What's the actually 500 means, and what is actually it is. But let's suppose I hit it and I got an error. So what's the exactly reason is, when I am saying that create a new product for me. So it is essential for me to provide the data to create a new product. So uh, now where I will be providing the new data. In our methods, we have one thing, like in our request, we have one more kind of concept, which is body. So whenever we are calling an endpoint, which is not, by the way, the get point not allows you to enter the body into request. But if I am hitting an post method, so I can pass the body, I can pass files, I can pass in body, I can pass files, I can pass the JSON kind of stuff, I can pass the XML kind of stuff, like different kind of data I can send from front end to back end. So let's suppose I am just passing the JSON, and we have all the we have all type of like logic into our these method, that what we are gonna do with that body which we will provide. So from code, if you have you can have an idea that we are just getting the name and price from our body, and then creating a new product, and then giving it like to database to store it. So here what we need to learn is the concept of body. When we say that we are creating a new product, so it is essential that we need to pass the actual body, so the product will be creating. So let's suppose I'm saying it the new product. So two things were required from the backend, which were written by ourselves: name and price. I'm just passing as same as it is requiring. So by sending, I got the green status. So it means that the product has been created. And when I'm just changing the method, and again, the method means is that now we want the products back. And now we can see in the end that the product which we created is now here. So we have the concept of like why we use get method and why we use post method. Now the third method is put. Put method says you about like we use put method whenever we want to replace our one resource with another resource. For example, I want to replace my this newly added product. So what I will be doing, I will be hitting the just put method, changing this put method, and same obviously if I want to change my product from database, I need to tell as a browser or client side, I need to tell the browser backend that what you actually need to change and what exactly changes we required. So same I'm saying that updated. First of all, we should provide actually the ID of that product. So here is the put method and ID. It is one more concept that you can add the IDs into the endpoints, and that ID will filtering out the products and updating our product. So let's just quickly add the ID. So we created our new product with the ID, which is basically with the ID of 7, and updated product is will just updating the product. that put request, what happened with that put method, we just updated the product, and again when I shift toward the get, I can have uh, I can have my products, and I can clearly see that the product has been updated. So the all I want to like deliver to you is not about how the product is changing, and I don't want like you to taking stress on this kind of stuff, how the product is changing and that stuff. Just have in your mind that why we are using the get method, post method, and these kind of method. So we have done with put method. In put method, we are changing all the fields of our resources. We have total two fields, and we changed our both two fields. So we used the put method. Now the next method is like patch method. Uh, this We use the patch method when we use some updates partially. So same as put, just we will need to change our method to put to patch, and providing the like those fields which we want to update, and that will be updating our resource. Now, from the name, we can have an idea that why we use the delete method. Delete method is used to delete any resource. So let's skip. I'm just skipping these two because we have an idea that what the exactly method is. It is all about the rules and how you are actually creating the APIs which can be used by others. So now let's discuss about the status codes. It is an important concept into the your request. Whenever the client is requesting, the response is getting back. So response have three kind of stuff. One is a status code, which will be telling the client that is your request succeed or not, or failed, or it has some kind of specific errors. So these status code will just giving the exactly what is happened into what happened into the backend side. The second thing is the response JSON, or anything, a stream, or like some kind of response which can which will be client using on front end side. And the third thing is headers, which we will discuss in later. So when we requested here, we got some kind of numbers. So this is the status code. So on client side, we can expect we are expecting some status code from backend. If the status code is into the boundaries of 100, then it means that it is some kind of informational stuff we are responding back towards the clients. So again, this is not as kind of strict, but we are following it to make our APIs available to others. So 200 boundary is used to represent that the response is saying that what you were is saying towards the client that what you are demanding is have been succeeded. So in 200, it is saying normally that request succeeded. 201 is the success response, which are saying that the resource have been created. So when we created our product, so it is supposed from you, expecting from you that you should return the 200 one response. So 204, these are some kind of like status code is status code, and you can explore it all on the MDN by the website. uh, So it is expecting from a good engineer that they are using the status codes accordingly. So these are all the listed here. You can explore them, but some of the important are listed here. Uh, f- 40 for bad request if something invalid data happens. 401 unauthorized, like if a person is not logged in, so it will get that 401 response without any response body. So that kind of you can explore them on MDN website. Now let's come toward the headers. What's the actually mean of like headers? We discussed that uh, it is the complete request is some kind of text and which includes three major things, and headers is one of them. So headers basically control the metadata about how your response should be in after like successful or something. So client can set the headers from front end for backend. Then backend will be having some decisions on that front, then that headers, and then obviously the response can also set headers for client side, and that then client side will be having some decisions on that headers. Something maybe it is somehow confusing, but let's have a very simple example. So as we said that it is our client side. So when I'm hitting, uh, so I have here an option for headers that are some kind of metadata which we are sending towards our server. So now I have one endpoint listed here, which is slash headers. What I'm doing here, I'm just console log here that what's the actually getting from client side, the what actual metadata is coming from the client side. So some headers, by the way, when we are using browser as our client, the browser is setting attaching some headers by default, which are mainly like these which are listed here. Host means that where you are requesting. User agent is that from where the request is coming. You may have accept is saying that what in response are you accepting, and then connection cable. Like you can also study these all kind of headers from MDN website. These some headers are essentials to we should have that in all in our mind. One of the very important header is authorization. What authorization do when we set, so before discussing these, now let's just have a look at how the headers look into the backend side. I'm just hitting the slash header and expecting that the headers will come back. So you have an idea that I got the response 404. It means that not found, like the endpoint is not found from my backend side. So I can now debug easily. So same as client will get back the responses with some status code, and you can have an idea that what happened into the backend side for debugging purposes. So now let's have a look from why we got 404. So we have headers endpoint here. Uh, so let's try again. So what we missed, maybe you picked it, we missed the S, and then now I'm just requesting, and obviously I have my own logics here. What I'm doing, just getting the headers from that request, which is sent, which is getting from client side, and now I'm consoling log here, and also I'm getting that in backing response. So I can clearly see the headers, and these are all the, by the way, headers which are default by which are using default by this software, because the request is going from this as a client. So when I will be requesting from my browser side, now let's have a look, by the way, that will give you broader information. So when I am requesting, now my client is this browser. So here I have user agent API dog, which I'm using. It is a software named as API dog. So and what content type is saying that application JSON, like what is it is sending, or and authorization passing some barriers. We will discuss. For now, just have look on accept. Accept is saying that I'm accepting any kind of response. It can be of JSON type, it can be of any streaming type, or uh, different kind of data you are expecting types. Post is where you are requesting. and accept encoding, that is some kind of compression types. Your browser is saying for compressions. Connection keep alive, that is for basically to having the connection, TCP connection alive for having better performances, some kind of that stuff. So I'm hitting that from browser now. The client is browser, and because it is an GET request, so we can directly execute it onto our uh, browser side. So I'm getting back the response, and this response is almost the same, but not in the format. Host is again the local host 3.0.1. It means that we are requesting toward that connection same. But I am trying to show you that uh, the user agent. Now let's just search it. Here is the user agent. So we clearly can see that the browser sets that headers accordingly, which is by default headers. And these headers are, by the way, some headers on the front end side, browser deal, which are coming from the server side, and default that has default behavior on the front end side. And same as we have some headers which maybe have some definitions on predefined definitions on CDN type of like stuff. For example, CDN have some kind of logic on there that whenever you are getting some kind of headers, so deal that request into a different way. So metadata is all about that. The headers is all about that. So let's suppose I'm just setting some kind of custom header. So custom header, I just give a name and a value, and then I'm requesting and getting back that header for just the clarification that we can set our own header, and on these basis we can define the according behaviors. So you may have a question into your mind that why we are using headers when we have an option to send these kind of metadata also from our body side. So let's discuss this also. Uh, so, before that, we can discuss the authorization to have a clear picture of that clear answer for that question. So authorization is saying that I have uh, like authorization have some kind of password thing, a token which backend verifies before a request or before the running of that logic behind that endpoint. He the the backend will be analyzing the token and allow or disallow the request that according to the token. For example, when I log in into an app on Facebook, I got a token, and whenever I will be requesting the backend of the Facebook, I will just attaching that token with my request on the metadata. So the Facebook will get now that I am requesting and I'm an authorized person and I'm allowed person. So it will allow me to get that data. Otherwise, if the token is not attached, or if the token is not attached and the backend is demanding that token, so obviously it will show you error. So let's have an example. By the way, we have some short time, so I'm just saving the time by not having the practical side. But now let's suppose I'm just displaying some code. What I'm doing here, it is some kind of middleware which will run before running any endpoint and any logic behind the endpoint. So what it is doing, that it is extracting the authorization token from the headers, and on the basic basis of that token, it is deciding that whether it request should proceed towards or it should return back the error that you don't have any header or you don't have any permission authorization type of stuff. So we can deal all this stuff in uh, before handling the body or before handling the request. Now maybe your question can be answered very clearly. So if let's suppose if we have no payload, we have no sorry, we have no metadata headers, and we are including, let's suppose we are including our authorization into our body. What will happen that on when the request will get onto the uh, backend, what it will do, it will decrypt all your body, and then from that body he will getting the authorization and authorization token. It means that you are processing all the body, you are processing all the request, and on in the end you are getting the authorization token, and then you are redirecting back if the person is not permissible of that accessing that resource. So headers allow the server's header allows the CDNs that first let's look upon the headers metadata, that if the person is allowed to access resources, if it not access allowed is not allowed to access resource, then the cache the CDN or our server will return the error without the decryptions of our body and that heavy stuff. So maybe you have any picture, you have a picture into your mind that why we are using the headers as a metadata. So designing resources, we already have discussed about some kind of stuff, like you need to have the plural and don't use the nouns. Oh, sorry, don't know, don't use the verbs into your resource endpoints. Use may try to use nouns like users. We said let's suppose the resource is users, so we are using users. We are not using the get users. Some juniors and which have not the knowledge, they are using, they mainly use the get users, create user, that kind of endpoint. This is not expected from the good engineers. So when we are getting a single user, so what we will do, we will have the resource name with obviously the plural, and then we will add the ID as a param into the URL, and that ID will be filtering the user accordingly and responding back. And then the third thing is that don't nest your URL allowed, maybe maximum towards 3 levels or maximum towards 2 levels. Here what the URL is clearly uh, can clearly give you the idea that what is happening behind the URL. That user C source, the one user mean that like we are selecting a user and then getting the orders of that user. So again, the logic will be writing from our side, the URL is deciding from our side, but this is the actual good way that what we are doing. We are genuinely creating a URL which can be understand from any side. So these kind of URLs are expected from the good engineers. So IDs cannot be same. Nested only 1 2 level. This is by the way all written in here. Nested, if you confuse into the nested thing, so that is that if a resource have some attachment with another, have any relation with any other resource, then you mainly use some kind of these kind of URL endpoints. So let's go towards stateless. This is one another rule which is saying that your request should be independent, because whenever you are, for example, let's suppose you have a load balancer in front of your servers. So load balancer is means that you have different servers and you don't know which server will be dealing with which request. So make sure that your request is stateless. It is not depending on any kind of state which is on server side. For like for user authentication or authorization, you are attaching the token every time with the or your with your request. So that is the main concept. By the way, it is also important. Evolving and scaling. Now let's come towards something interesting. How can we create our APIs somehow? The scalable scaling means like when the like huge traffic came towards your like API, it is not crashing and behaving differently or giving some errors. So we deal with this by some kind of, like, there are a lot of, by the way, there are a lot of things which we need to consider while creating our scalable APIs and reliable APIs, but some of them are here. API versioning. So it is a basic, it is again a rule. It is not a strict, it is a pattern that how we can we should have our AP, our endpoints look like. So let's suppose, why versioning, by the way, you use, why they came into picture. So let's suppose we have an URL. So I had some example. Uh, if anyone has some query, you can ask, then we will move forward. So have anyone has any query? You may can ask into the chat. We will discuss in end of the session. Keep in mind that you are representing 30, 40, or maybe 100 or 200 of students, which will be which will be having this recording. So if you have any query, you may have, and we will clear that into end of the session. So let's suppose we have a resource user, and when we implement it for the first time, we design an API which is returning the users as this kind of, like, user ID, full name, email address. Okay. Now this API, this server is using by different clients. Maybe you have developed an ChatGPT, and ChatGPT's API is using by thousands of or like millions of third parties. So when like you change some client, for example, demands you to change the full name to name, or you may feel something to change into your field side, which can break your whole system, because this is the response from backend side. So the front end will obviously handling your backend accordingly. Let's suppose this responding is handling from the request side, the client side, that you will be getting a response, and they are getting the full name from backend and just displaying on the front end side. So when you change that full name field to the single even name field, what will happen that on the front end side, who will be dealing with full name, will get break, and obviously it is not a it is not a better like. So what we can do here, we can use the versioning type of thing. If we need to change something which can break the browser side, which can break some of clients, so we can use the versioning thing. Like in if a, upper picture, for an upper picture, like I just hit the API v1 users, that is the version 1, by the way. Let's suppose I just created a version API, like, let's have a look. Users. Mhm. So maybe you have an idea that what I'm trying to explain. uh, easily okay, just leave it. Okay, sorry for my side. Acha, now I'm requesting just API users, and let's suppose it is the first version of our API, and it is returning back the name and email field. So now when someone demands that I need to change name towards the full name, so it means that the clients can break. So we created a one new version with some kind of like different backend logic that will now return the name, that will now not returning the name, and that will now return full name. So we created it, and now the fields is changed. Now the new client can use this endpoint, and the old ones is now can continue their like site and without any breaking things. So that is all about the versioning, and versioning can be implemented by different patterns. You can, as we saw about like URI versioning, you can add different like in URL you added some v1 and v2. The second type of versioning can be implemented using query parameters. You can add the query params into your URL. By adding the query params, you can say that follow that version. And obviously on the backend side, you will all dealing by your side logically. You can add the an header, specific header, and then deal it on the backend side. So these three strategies basically used into the for handling the versioning. So now let's come toward the GraphQL. It is very different from REST, and now let's look why we use the GraphQL, and why not in which situation the GraphQL is better, and in which situation we can use the REST. So if you have any query, now let's come to it, and if you have any query, you can ask, and then we will move for the GraphQL. We just completed our REST API REST API, the essentials that what we should follow, the rules what we should follow according to the industry standards. So if you have any query into that, you can ask. Otherwise, let's start on new topic.
Can you explain a bit about variant?
Versioning, good question. So we discussed that versioning, why we need versioning. Like if you have some kind of business logics in your, let's suppose you implement a new API, version 1, for example, and in that API you have different kind of logic. And now, after 3 months, a new client came onto your site, and it said that like I want something different. So when you change into your first initial variant, it means that you are changing the behavior of your responses towards those who have already implemented those variants. So when you will be changing that variants, that kind of responses, what will happen that the client which already dealing with that responses, they make and break. So there are possibilities they make and break. So what you can do in that scenarios, that you create a new endpoint, or you create a new, by the way, logic, the new logic into your backend, and attach with and can use any strategy from these to to redirect on that logic. So the previous ones who have already using your previous variant should also not be breaked, and the new ones should also be satisfied. So this concept means as diversioning. Have you cleared?
So we can use any of these three methods, like if
Yeah.
we use simple.
Yes, yeah. Actually, these three are strategies you make an anyone. The actual concept is what we are doing. We are preventing our system to not behave wrong in both scenarios, to deal with the previous customers and to deal with our new customers. Customers are, it is not essential that the customers, maybe you have any idea, you need to implement something, and that is some different from your previous variant. So okay, is it clear? So let's move.
Yeah, got it.
Okay, now we have a different concept than REST. GraphQL, uh, let's have an example, by the way, side by side. So GraphQL is the GraphQL is basically it is a query language, a different concept than REST. In REST, what we are doing, we are creating some endpoints, and on that endpoints, we have some business logics behind that endpoints, and we are returning from that. On GraphQL, you have a single endpoint. It is a, by the way, query language that allows client to request exactly the data that they need from a single endpoint. Solving It is solving the rest problems like overfetching means, like, for example, I just need users IDs on my some client side. So why we request all the data from my backend side? So it is what it is doing, it is adding much more bandwidth, it is consuming much more bandwidth on the network side, and obviously it is loading from the database and then consuming the RAM. That all stuff is like in overfetching, and obviously it will happen in the multiple round trips. Maybe you required only the ID from users and the other resources, orders from link which is linked with user, and you just want the ID from user and just want the amount from order. So in REST, what you will be doing, uh, either there are two kind of ways to solve this. Maybe you may can have a different endpoint which will be dealing with this kind of stuff, and or other thing is you hit the first the user resource and then the order resource, and then just use the required fields and ignore others. So there are two kind of problems in both scenarios. In first scenario where we are defining our endpoints, so here question arises how many endpoint we will be defining. Maybe on first page we required like a single ID. On next page maybe we require a name of the user. So how many endpoints we need to define? So this is a basic problem that GraphQL will solve. And the second case where we are saying that just let the backend send every data, and on the front end side I will be filtering what I required. So there obviously the network bandwidth is using, and it will increasing your cost. So that is the problem that will happen, that will resolved by the GraphQL. So GraphQL is a language, and it allows you to request a single endpoint and just say whatever you required, and it will auto handles everything and responds back you exactly what you want. So endpoints, we have a very small table on the difference on REST and GraphQL. And in REST, we have the endpoints, different kind of endpoints, many endpoints. And on GraphQL, we have single one GraphQL endpoint. The response shape is server decide. Obviously, the logic we have we have proper logic here. Let's suppose it is an endpoint and I have all the logic and I am deciding what should actually be returned on the front end side. But on the other hand side, in GraphQL, you cannot like the client side is deciding what actually you want. The client side wants. So fetching side can, as we discussed, it can overfetch or underfetch. Exactly in GraphQL, you fetch exactly what you are requiring. In caching, it is a advantage side of like REST, for REST, that you can use caching very easily because it has the unique endpoints. But caching is harder into the GraphQL because a single point has different dynamic kind of bodies, so that will be difficult to cache. So in by CDNs, if you have any concept, we cannot like deep down into the CDN and how the caching exactly works, but you may have an idea into your mind that endpoints and bodies are deciding what to cache. So in errors, you can have different kind of status codes with errors. So in GraphQL, you get always the usually you get the 200 response status code, and the errors come into the body of like what you are returning from the backend. Okay. So from the versioning side, REST, as we discussed, and obviously have an experiment that versioning is very simple. On the other hand side, GraphQL schema can evolve, fields can deprecate it. So uh, it is already versioned. So watch out for predictable, simple, and yeah, we have one problem with GraphQL that if you have nested kind of like stuff, you want nested resources, so that may include the n plus query problem. So that is a problem that we face, and let's have a discuss in details. Okay. 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 Let's see some code on GraphQL for just clarity. Have a picture in your mind. Uh, I will provide you, by the way, this code and you can experiment it. We cannot cover everything into these 2 hours, and obviously, maybe some things are just passing from your head. But I just want to give you an idea about this stuff so you can have complete experiment from your side. So we created again. We are creating a Node.js server, and here is our server running. We have three different parts of like three parts which define exactly the GraphQL. A schema. Schema tells about like what exactly you have resources. Like now we are aside from the endpoints. In REST, we have everything behind the behind the endpoints that what actually happened. So in GraphQL, we have schemas. So in schema, we define that our resources, like which resources we have, we can define our query. Uh, we will have a look what the exactly query is. Query is basically what the client will be asking about the like here we have two different kind of queries with you can explore these on GraphQL documentation that what are the syntax for having the queries. But in broader picture, we can say that queries are what we will be using on the front end side to having the data on front end. So mutations are same like as query, but mutation used to create some resource or to update some resource. It query, let's suppose query is like an get request, and mutation is like post or patch or even the delete request. So we define first the schema and then resolvers against that schema, that what will happen when product query happen, as we have the query here products. So now we defined, obviously our logics are here, what we will be doing into our products, and when someone will query the product with ID, then what we will be doing. So resolvers is a concept in GraphQL which we can relate with the controllers on the REST side, like the business logics. So we have query and mutations here. The actual things what should happen when the query happen. So now let's have a look on when you create. By the way, it is a very simple GraphQL server which we have created from Apollo. So now let's have a look that what exactly we found on that. Fine. Uh, so okay. So GraphQL is providing you all the interface for testing your queries. Give me just 2 minutes. I'm coming back. Okay. I don't know why this server is not starting. Okay, that was the reason, I think. Okay. Now, is everything fine, like the picture and the voice? Okay. Now, as I just hit a point and we have all the already created UI from the Apollo server, GraphQL server, by the way. So now we can query from there. Uh, for query, let's suppose we have two kinds of queries. One is query and second one is mutation. So we have a resource same like in REST. Now we have the source products and what we want is just IDs. So when we run this, now we are getting the response from GraphQL server. And now it is not like it is predefined. The structure is predefined. You will be getting your data into data. And when an error will come, you will be having the errors in there. For that, let's throw an error and just have a look at what happened. So I just changed my query resolver, a controller which is controlling the this query. Now, when I'm requesting, I'm getting the errors in the place of the data. So that is the difference, by the way, into in REST and GraphQL. So we have discussed why we are using GraphQL and in which things they are better and what problems are it solving. So here, let's have a test on our mutation. It is like we are creating create product. Now, as we define our schema, it is all according to our schema. We have mutation with create product. So we as a developer wrote the schema resolvers and all the logics. But the thing is, on the front end side, I'm calling the create product from schema, and it is creating the product, and this query is helping me to get the product. So that is all, by the way, the basics of GraphQL. You can explore all the details on their documentation. So now let's go toward our next topic. If you have any query, you can ask according to the theory of GraphQL for syntax and the processing and all that stuff. You can consider the documentation. So have you any question? You may can ask. Remember, bro, you are representing. Okay. Let's move toward our next topic. So rate limiting. Now we are getting toward the part where we are securing our APIs. We are making our APIs more stable, more reliable, and scalable. So the very important concept into to achieve the scalability, to achieve the reliability, because if your system is scalable, then it can be reliable. So the rate limiting is the process, is a technique using the APIs to control exactly how many requests a client can make in a given time period. It ensures that uh, the system behave well in for everyone. So for example, attacker can come into the your income onto your server and do some DDoS attack to prevent this kind of thing. Because even if someone do that illegal stuff with your API, so it will be unavailable for every your client, and obviously that is not good for us as a developer. So we need to make sure that our backend and our APIs should be reliable. So there are three different types of rate limiting. Rate limiting means we have discussed that we are limiting our clients to do the request to our APIs according to some strategies. There are three different strategies: fixed window, in fixed window. In fixed window, what is happening that we are defining that in specific time, the like in 1 minute I allow someone to request 300 times on my API. So it is all about the time interval and the number of fixed requests that can happen on our backend. So I have an example here. It is very basic API limiting. So you can expand every topic as much as you can, but all this stuff is just giving you an idea, so you can deep dive into by yourself. So again, it is a Node.js server, and we want that no one should able to request this server more than 100 times into 1 minute. So that is, for example, a fixed limiter. So what for let's suppose we are discussing first about the first type of our rate limiting, which is that how many requests are allowed in some interval. So we define here, uh, we are using here the Redis. Redis is a database, by the way. Just you can have a picture into your mind that Redis is storing your data accordingly, that which person, which IP, which computer or which client side is requesting, and how many times it already requested, and how many it left for according to the rate limiting. So it is a very simple limiter which is saying that client is allowed to do 10 requests into the duration of 60 seconds. So maybe we can also what will happen, by the way, when a user exceed its limit? So the user, when the client exceed its limit, the server should return back a response, a specific response with a specific status code. A 409 status code will tell them that you have exceeded your limit, and the client will have can have an idea. So rate limiting is not all about to securing your API. You may can have a rate limiting according to your tokens. Like for example, ChatGPT or Claude is doing. They are allowing some kind of tokens into in some interval. So they are all doing the same stuff into a some better in with a some better way. So here we have running our server on 300 3000. So what I'm gonna do, I'm using autocannon for requesting my this endpoint, and I will throw 100 request toward this endpoint, and let's see how much will get succeed. So let's have a very simple. So this is command. I just ran that autocannon is requesting toward my this endpoint, like the server, and now in the end, let's have a result that how many requests have been succeeded and how many got failed. So we have a clear view that uh, 100 requests into 15 seconds. IDs. Maybe anything is still running on 3000 pod, and the, the same issue what we have faced already. Am I audible or my internet just uh, do response anyone please? Okay, okay, okay. Okay, the reason maybe because Redis is a database, so I have not run the Redis, so I'm just running it. Actually, you should handle these all kind of like errors, but obviously this is the very basic side to explain the concept, so we didn't did anything. So yeah, now we have all our data that we expected. So now I'm doing the same. I'm requesting some like a bulk amount of request towards my endpoint, and now we will see that how much is getting succeed and how much is getting a response that error response, by the way. So 10 of them should succeed according to our logic, and others should get. 9 of them got 200 responses. As we studied that 200 responses means that it is successful. So, and others are got rejected. Like they are saying that others are non 200 responses. Fourth, it requested around 46,000 of requests. So, why we got the 9? Because one of them are from their side. So we have a very clear picture that why we use the rate limiting, because we want to prevent our systems to down in peak times and in DDoS attacks type of thing. So that is the prevention. And now we have different types: sliding limiter and token limiter. Let's have a theoretical example. Otherwise, there is nothing different than just a simple query, just a simple parameter. Okay. In fixed window, we have discussed we have a specific time and we have a specific limit. In sliding window, uh, in the we say that now 200 requests are allowed in 60 seconds. In previous 60 seconds, now the window is just running, and uh, you are allowed to do some like count of request into the previous 60 seconds or previous time interval. Why we need to do this stuff? So I have an example for this to explain better. Mm, uh, Maybe I have lost, but the main idea is that we are trying to prevent our system to handle the burst spikes. Like for example, I have 1 minute of limit. 1 minute. We have like let's suppose we have thousands of requests can be happen into 1 hour. Okay? Now it can happen like anyone could be able to do 2000 requests into 2 seconds. How it can be possible? So it can possible by using like when we are using the fixed rate limit. How it will be how it will be possible, and it is by the way dangerous for our server side. Let's suppose the user is hitting in the last second of our first hour and the first second of our next hour. That means that the 1,000 requests on our 60 second here and the 1,000 requests are on our first second. So hey, for this to deal with this scenario, we have different kind of concept. We can solve it by using the sliding window. Now, what sliding window say that you have a specific time of window. Let's suppose 60 seconds. No, if you reach on your limit into that window, now you cannot request in your next 60 seconds. So that is the concept basically. And in third strategy, we have token bucket strategy, where what here the each request spend a token, and token is refilling into an time along the control burst. Um, like for example, I had a very good representation into a diagram, but I just lost it. So let's let's have an example that in token burst, user is requesting, and you have a limit on the bucket. You have for example a bucket which has limit of 1,000 requests. 1,000 requests, or let's suppose you have a limit of like 100 requests. So you have a mechanism, maybe you have a mechanism that refill that bucket in every minute with two or five requests. Like user, whenever the user will be requesting on our server, what will be happening that it will consume one single request, one single token from the bucket. And in the case of like burst spikes or like DDoS attack, let's suppose a user hit the server 100 times, uh 100 times, what will happen, like in 100 times the bucket gets empty, and now on the 101 it will get error of obviously 49 hour, that error that your tokens has been finished, or like you have reached your limit. So now uh, according to our mechanism, like for example, we set it our mechanism that after 5 minutes you will add five tokens into the bucket, and after 5 minutes the user will be able to request again, and obviously it will then request for five times only, obvious, and when it will reach 26 it will get the error. So this mechanism is ensuring about like the both kinds. So that is the best mechanism from them, but obviously none of them can consider be very best. Everyone have their own trade-offs. So let's move toward our next topic, paginate larger data. Whenever I'm on the front end side and I want some products, let's suppose I'm on the Facebook page and I'm getting the products. So when I get on the Facebook page and the millions, because Facebook database is too much high, so the millions can be get on the one time. So why they are not sending the million? There are a lot of reasons which we have already discussed. Like it will take much more bandwidth, which will consume much more like RAM onto obviously the server side also, and on the browser side. When you, let's suppose on the browser side you are getting thousands of posts even, then your browser will crash, and because of space fulfillment. So the pagination is all about to handle to break down the large data into some chunks according to the obviously the logic. As when we go towards our any e-commerce brand or e-commerce site or etc., we may usually see that when we do next, it loads the next 20 products, and when we do next product, next 20 products, means that they're not getting all the products on the one side, one click. So that is all about the pagination. Now we have three different types of pagination. Offset based pagination, it means that you are defining from where from which from which limit you need. Like let's have a look into the code for a better review. Mm, so here the pagination in offset, what we are saying from a front end, we are passing two things, offset and limit. Offset is all about that from where you need to start getting the products, and where and how much products you want. Offset is a number, by the way. It will tell the server that I have already the 20 products, and now send me the next 20 limit products and start from the 20 ID. Let's suppose I'm here I'm getting just offset and limit, and this is a very basic SQL query which is defining, which is extracting the products from that offset towards the limit according to the limit, and that paginated products can be returned towards our client side. The second type is page-based pagination. Now, this can be confusing, offset and page-based, but here is a very minor difference. Offset is directly saying that get the product from, for example, our one page is getting 10 products, and second page is 10 product, and all that up to so on. For example, let's suppose I am on the first page, so the my offset will be 0 and limit will be 10. So if I am on the second page, then I will be sending 10, and then obviously limit will be same, but I am saying that start from number 10 and go towards next 10. And in the next page I will be obviously saying to start from 20 and then do it. But in the page-based pagination, you are getting page number from client side and calculating offset by yourself into the into the server side. So let's suppose you are getting page from front end 0 page, and then page number 1 and limit is 10, page number is 2 and limit is 10, and then you are calculating the offset by page number, and that is a very simple formula that is calculating the offset accordingly, and the query will be obviously the same. The third part is an advanced, and it is very, by the way, useful in our paginations. What they are saying, that use an exact cursor to get the products. What it means that, like, we studied once into the C++ a concept of pointers. The same thing is here. Cursor means that what actually you have the last ID of product, and now you are passing the exact ID towards backend, and then backend will be using that ID and fetch the next limit of the products by using this ID. What advantage we are getting from this cursor based pagination is that when we are running this query in SQL, it means that, let's suppose the offset is calculated as uh like thousands, 10,000. So what will happen that in SQL, it will first go through all the 10,000 products and then obviously stop on that 10,000 and limit that and then return. Means we are traversing from all these 10,000 products. But on the cursor based pagination, it is very different. Like, you are just saying that you have a cursor and you are using this kind of SQL query, and what it is doing, it is directly going toward the ID, and you have this condition is make showing that you are directly going toward ID because of the superpower like indexing, superpower of databases, and then you are ordering it and returning back according to the limit. So it is efficient because here you didn't traverse all the data of offsets. So these are three different types of pagination. Now, there is another concept is very important into our scalable API designing, is known as idempotency. Maybe the time is too much, so let's cover it in a short time. Idempotency means that, like, whenever the client is requesting towards backend a same request with the same payload, then it should be the server should behave the same, and should not do anything wrong. For example, the front end is sending front end is hitting a backend server, a backend endpoint to create an order. So when something happens into the, like, for example, sometimes network error goes. So I have a API dot blah blah dot com, और आपने कहा I have an order, ठीक है? So on this, maybe you are doing some payment or you are handling some orders. So you don't want to have a duplicate orders on the backend side. So let's suppose your request has been gone, but your network inside has been you got a network error and your response is not good back, and or a case like where a user click multiple time on a button, or you didn't handle that case into the front end, so that can cause the duplications into your DB side, and it can be a major it can cause a major disaster into your server side. So we handle that kind of stuff with idempotency. Idempotency means by the way is to like ensure that repeating the same request multiple times produces the same final result as executing it once or multiple time as executing it once. So making APIs safe for retries caused by network failures can be reason, timeouts can be reasons, or a client side resubmission like if a user is clicking again and again on the button, that can be reasons for like why we need to ensure redundancy. So there are different kind of like methods which can be used for idempotency. The first one is like to use idempotency keys, which is you are sending a unique key from your request, which will tell the backend that the request is same or not, and according to that, the server will deal that request. Let's suppose I'm on the page, and when I am on the page, I have a different ID. Let's suppose an ID of one, and I'm clicking on this button, and this button is what it will do. It will create an order on the backend side. So when I click it for example, 5 times or 6 times, so the ID is same. So for the first time, as I send the ID one, but how the idempotency key that ID will handle the situation is he will cache this ID into the any database or Redis or anywhere. So it will just check that if the request came from that user, that IP with same key, then it will just response back the cached response, and it will not like create an other order. So that is the idempotency keys. And second thing is a request hash. Like you are using the hash function on the backend side and hashing all the request, which is by the way the text, which method is using which endpoint and what is exactly the payload coming from the client side, and you are hashing it and obviously caching on the Redis. And then when the user is requesting again, you have that cache into your Redis, and you can easily verify that is it requesting for multiple time, or it is for the first time. And DB constraints, obviously, when you are doing that kind of stuff, like transaction is a sensitive issue, and you should have the separate tables for handling these kind of stuff. Like a user should not have different transactions for a single order. So if an order has different transactions, so obviously you are mismanaging the data, and that can cause the bad API designing. So in the end, it is our end topic of open API as a product. Now there are when like I think that you are getting bored. If you have any question and you want to discuss anything, you may can share. By the way, किस किसको समझ आ रही है? You may can raise your hands. Just note down the things. We can discuss these all in like in our native by clan meeting. So the things will be interesting for you when you will deep dive into and follow these, because by there are a lot of engineers working in the industry, so they are not following these kind of stuff, and it is not about the engineers, it is about the industry practices. So we need to make sure like as an engineer to work according to the rules. So that is all about the how we can design this stuff. Maybe that is somehow boring, but obviously essential. So now let's move to our end
Only have
topic.
two questions. Uh,
जी जी पूछो.
it's from the previous topics actually. Why do we create headers?
Why do we need headers?
Why do we
Is it
create headers? I mean, what are their purpose?
Can you please write it down into your chat so we will discuss in the end, because it is an interesting question, and obviously it can be confusing for beginners. So we will discuss in the end.
Okay. Uh,
So in the
and I
end,
am
we will
also confused about, sorry, I am also confused about pagination. Uh, that
pagination.
do we perform pagination?
Okay, you may have write down into your chat. So in the end, we will
Okay, okay.
obviously talk about this into English as well into Urdu for better understandings. Okay, or also we can do it that on our clan meetings. So now let's move toward. Let's just quickly cover our last topic, Open API. Now it is a mechanism to document your to design your APIs before implementing into your front end side or even before implementing into your backend side. So you may get confused about like when I said that designing an API before designing an API. So it is the basically that stuff. Why it needs because because whenever you're working in a bigger industries and you are designing an API, which where the first step is to design on the paper or like in the documentation side. So the second step should be of like to create a contract that I am gonna design these endpoints which will be handling that kind of stuff, and you will be that in that era, in that stage you are defining a contract in Open API. By the way, in this stage you are defining a contract that the client will implement things on client side according to that contract, and the backend developer will also be following that contract to develop all the backend logics. So how we develop that kind of contracts? So these are some points why we use this parallel development, because we want the contract, a single contract that front end and back end both should follow, and without any lack of like, because we don't want that a front end person always asking like which which endpoint I need to hit for this simple service, and like it will it can distract the developers to develop things efficiently. So to to uh, to fewer our integration bugs automatically, like these kind of things are make sure by Open API. Uh, this is the production workflow. API design a contract first, write the Open API spec. That is what we are discussing about. Then contract review. Now let's have an example. I have that all into my code, but okay, let's have, I'm just trying to save the time, but okay, it is important, so we will discuss about this. So let's suppose we have an API which has a load of endpoints, and every endpoint is behaving differently. Obviously, the logic behind that endpoint is different, and we need and the client obviously will be integrating the that API, and the client can be multiple. So what we need to make sure is minimum confusions, and obviously not only the client will be using that API, the testers will be testing the platform according to that APIs, or maybe even if you are gonna share that API with your third party for as a third party integration, so you may can provide to your like as a provider to others. So that documentation type of stuff is needed there. So that can be make sure using some kind of tools like Swagger. Swagger is used to create the documentation of your endpoints, and not only the documentation, it is to create your exact endpoint to test it out on your like before implementing actual APIs. So let's have a look. Like I have the module resource of products. So here I have different like kind of endpoints. So what I want that before even implementing the logics, I want to tell my client that that is the exactly what I am gonna design. So take it and just implement the client side accordingly, and I am gonna implement the development side, the business logic side. So let's have a look. Like, so what I just did is uh, it is very simple to integrate the Swagger with your any API. And the best practice is that don't wait to end your everything, like to write every logic into your API designing and then go toward the writing the docs. That is not the best practice. If you have any vision to share it with any others, and even if you have any bigger APIs, then the best practice is that before even writing the logics, design your first documentation, design your first the contract, open API contract. So I just integrated the Swagger, and what I'm doing that uh, these kind of YAML code. YAML is a type of like how just like the JSON, you write some YAML thing, YAML kind of code, and this code is telling that exactly what method is using, uh, and what is it endpoint is doing. You can define anything here, get all products, bro. The tags to show on the documentation, the responses to tell the client that what exactly you will be getting on 200 response. And for obviously you can also define there the errors, that whenever you will be getting which errors. So by just adding these some lines, what I am getting on the front end side is my this kind of a beautiful documentation, which I can also test. Like this is an endpoint, and even for let's suppose I don't have anything there. So let's suppose I have these all, and I have defined all the things here. Now, maybe it is not into much details, no have any parameters, and not have any responsive documentations, all that. But still, I can provide all the things. And let's go if I'm a client, I'm a client developer, like front end developer. I'm seeing all that stuff. I know that on the 200 status, I will be getting these. On 400 status, on errors, I will be getting this. So that all stuff will help me to, as a front-end developer, it helped me to implement things easily. So what client developer will do, listen carefully, like on the client side, the client developer, the front-end developer will be using these documentation and create the mock, uh, like for parallelism, like when the backend engineer is developing all the business logics, the front end what it will be doing, mocking the same responses on the front end side and using these mocks. So whenever the backend finishes their work, then the mocks can be replaced with the real actual APIs, and it can ensure the parallelism into our front end and back end development, and for all obviously for our QA alignment. So that is all the stuff. API design contract, you write the open API specs using Swagger, etc. There are multiple kind of, and very much better than obviously the Swagger, but Swagger is mostly used by industries. So we contract review obviously after documentation have been created from, then you like we should, as a good engineer, we should have our all, not only have all our documentation, but we should review them. We should have a complete PRs against them. That will ensure the correctness of your API. So as we discussed, the front end will be mocking and building parallelly, and on the parallel side, the front backend developer will be writing the logics of that APIs. Contract testing, release and evolve, like you should test your all the contracts and all that stuff. Where people go wrong. mm, Now these are some kind of like everything what we have discussed. Here are some listed something which should not be happened. People usually use verbs, always returning to 100, even something breaking, and deep nesting in the URLs that we discussed. No versioning plan. There are no versioning. Post without idempotency. So stateful requests, like they are expecting from the front end side that every time the same server is dealing. Design an API contract. That is all about the API contract, the core concepts that all we discussed, what to do next, build and break it to now you may have an idea, and if you wrote everything into your, or maybe some points onto your like register or something, you can deep dive into every each topic, and here are some kind of codes. I will be sharing you with the link. But the important part is like these are all the basics, very basic types. You should you should do these all stuff and deep diving into for better understandings. So just go deep dive and do your all stuff. So now let's come toward our questions. So first question is that why do we need headers? So we discussed like headers are all about the metadata into our request. Client is requesting to our backend with some metadata, and obviously the response can also add the headers into response, and that is also the that will also define some kind of like stuff onto client side. So why do we need it is a different question, and why do we need headers except the body? Why we are not including headers into our body? This is a different question. So can you please elaborate this one? Uh, can you please elaborate Subhan, ke why what are you asking exactly? Because headers can be used for multiple purposes. As we know, as we discussed, that browsers is dealing with some default headers. Let's suppose we are sending a request and having some as we discussed here. mm, these are the headers, by the way, which are we getting from response, and these are the headers which are we as a client side is attaching towards the backend. So these are like these headers host is defining exactly that who is where are the request is going. So let's have an example, like user agent, for example. You if you want to have some kind of logic into your backend set that only allow the browser users, so you can have an implementation connection keep alive. You can implement these kind of stuff accordingly. Content type, it is a very important header, which is saying that which is like saying that which response is coming back. Like it is these are the headers which are coming from the backend side. It is telling that what exactly type of data you are getting from these API endpoint. So maybe like you can use it with anything, with any logic. Let's suppose if you are getting it on the browser side as as a client, then you may have thing like you don't want to deal with application JSON type of data. You want just the streaming. So you make an request another endpoint or have an type of thing. So content type. These are some headers. So Suhan, can you please tell me exactly what are you? So we send and receive cookies and tokens like things in headers. Uh, yeah, cookies is also an header. So cookies are also just have an example. Let's see, are we getting cookies on? That are all the questions that should raise into your minds, which obviously expand your knowledge. Content type, authorization. Maybe you can control the cookies from your response, but we can have research on this. Cookies. अच्छा, मैं आपको इसको ना लेट्स इलेबोरेट इनटू योर ऑन लैंग्वेज सो फॉर बेटर अंडरस्टैंडिंग कि देखो, अगर हेडर्स आप भेज रहे हो ना, फ्रंट एंड साइड से आप हेडर्स भेज रहे हो टू डिफाइन अ स्पेसिफिक लाइक लॉजिक्स ऑन डिफरेंट बैक एंड साइड। अब इधर अगर मैं आपको बात करता हूँ ना कैशे कंट्रोल की, ठीक है, कैशे कंट्रोल एक हेडर, ठीक है, सीडीएंस होते हैं कुछ काइंड ऑफ सर्वर्स विच आर रीडायरेक्टिंग योर रिक्वेस्ट फ्रॉम वन टू अनदर सर्वर। तो अब आप चाहते हो कि वो सीडीएन मेरा जो डाटा है ना, एक अगर आप एक रिक्वेस्ट कर रहे हो और आपका एक रिस्पॉन्स आ रहा है और आप चाहते हो कि मेरा वो रिस्पॉन्स कैश ना हो, ठीक है, मतलब आप चाहते हो हर दफा ही वो एक रिफ्रेश रिस्पॉन्स आना चाहिए, ठीक है, तो उसके लिए फिर आपने क्या, कैशे का हेडर आपने सेट कर दिया उस सर्वर के अकॉर्डिंग। आपको पता है ना कि उस सर्वर ने कैशे का हेडर डील करना है, आपने वो उसको सेट कर दिया, ठीक है। और जैसे हम ऑथराइजेशन की बात कर रहे थे, ठीक है, अब ऑथराइजेशन को हेडर के अंदर रखना इसलिए जरूरी है कि अगर आपकी रिक्वेस्ट बैक आनी है, अगर आप ऑथराइज पर्सन नहीं हो, ठीक है, आपकी रिक्वेस्ट जाएगी सर्वर के पास और सर्वर आपके पहले हेडर्स देखेगा। बॉडी अगर आपने उसमें देखनी है ना, वो क्योंकि वो एक डिफरेंट फॉर्म के अंदर है, मे बी इट इज इन अ बिट फॉर्म, ठीक है, और उसको पार्स होना है पहले। अगर वो उसको पार्स करने में जो सर्वर की कॉस्ट लगनी है, मतलब जो सर्वर ने एग्जीक्यूट करनी है थिंग्स, आप उससे बचने के लिए आप पहले ही हेडर्स को कंसीडर करोगे। हेडर्स में से ऑथराइजेशन निकाला, ऑथराइजेशन में से टोकन मिला, ठीक है, हेडर की ऑब्वियसली ऑथराइजेशन के अगेंस्ट जो वैल्यू पड़ी है, आपने उस टोकन को वेरीफाई कर लिया। अगर वो टोकन वेरीफाई नहीं हुआ तो उसने आपने उसको रिक्वेस्ट को आगे ही नहीं जाने दिया। अगर आपने उसको रिक्वेस्ट को आगे नहीं जाने दिया तो आपने वो पार्सिंग वगैरह नहीं किया, आपने वहीं से जो है रिटर्न बैक कर दिया, ठीक है। तो दिस काइंड ऑफ स्टफ जो है ना वो हम हेडर से डील करते हैं। कस्टम, अब देखो हेडर्स के अंदर और बड़ी चीजें आ सकती हैं। आप हेडर्स के अंदर यूजर की क्या नाम है, रेट लिमिटिंग वगैरह डिफाइन कर सकते हो, ठीक है। आप किसी स्पेसिफिक पर्सन के लिए रेट लिमिट, स्पेसिफिक यूजर क्लाइंट के लिए रेट लिमिटिंग वगैरह डिफाइन कर सकते हो। तो ये सारी चीजें जो कि आपको एक रिक्वेस्ट को एक्सेस कर, मतलब रिक्वेस्ट की बॉडी को एक्सेस करने से पहले उसके बारे में उसका सारा मेटा डाटा कि ये एग्जैक्टली रिक्वेस्ट आई किस लिए है, ठीक है, और वो रिक्वेस्ट लेकर के आई है, एक्सेप्ट क्या कर रही है, ठीक है, रिक्वेस्ट रिक्वेस्ट की कंटेंट टाइप क्या है, क्या ले, और ये सारी चीजें आप उसको पहले से बता रहे हो। उसके ऊपर आपका सर्वर डिसाइड करेगा या आपका ब्राउजर डिसाइड करेगा कि इस रिक्वेस्ट को आगे एग्जीक्यूट करना है कि नहीं करना। दैट काइंड ऑफ स्टफ इज डीलिंग विद द हेल्प ऑफ हेडर्स। व्हाट इज द मेन पर्पस ऑफ इट? हाँ, पर्पस इज ना डिफरेंट है। अब ये देखो, अगर मैं इधर जाता हूँ ना, तो HTTP हेडर्स की तरह देर आर मल्टीपल टाइप ऑफ हेडर्स और इनके अपने अपने डिफरेंट पर्पसेस हैं। एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट हेडर जैसे क्रॉस ओरिजिन का आपको अगर आइडिया हो कि आप आपका सर्वर डिसाइड करेगा कि कहाँ से रिक्वेस्ट आनी चाहिए, कहाँ से रिक्वेस्ट नहीं आनी चाहिए, ठीक है। आपने एक हेडर सेट कर दिया फॉर एग्जांपल कि आपने सिर्फ लोग एग्जैक्टली इसी यूआरएल से आपको जो है ना रिक्वेस्ट चाहिए, नहीं तो आपके सर्वर ने इसको एक्सीड ही नहीं करना, आप अलाउ ही नहीं करना चाहते किसी और को। तो दैट काइंड ऑफ स्टफ कैन बी हैंडल यूजिंग हेडर्स, ठीक है। इसके अलावा देखो ये कनेक्शन, ये मतलब सारे तो इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है ऑब्वियसली, जो जो आपको जिस जिस टाइम यूज करना हो आप वो यूज कर सकते हो। ओरिजिन जिसके भी मैं बात कर रहा था, ये आप इसको यूज कर सकते हो। तो अगर आपको डीप डाइव करना है तो फिर वही बात है कि आप इनके पर्पजेस के ऊपर पढ़ सकते हो। द मेन थिंग इज कि आपकी एग्जैक्ट रिक्वेस्ट क्या, आपको इस वक्त ना वो समझ आना चाहिए रिक्वेस्ट के अंदर एग्जैक्टली क्या होता है। अब जो है ना, इसको बहुत हवा बनाया जाता है ना कि बहुत ज्यादा पता नहीं क्या एग्जैक्टली रिक्वेस्ट क्या है। कुछ भी नहीं है, जस्ट आप इसको कंसीडर करोगे एक टेक्स्ट है, ठीक है, उसके अंदर आपने मेथड बता दिया, आपने उसका एंड पॉइंट बता दिया, पेलोड ऐड कर लिया और हेडर्स ऐड कर लिए। अब इनके डिफरेंट पर्पसेस डिफाइन किए गए हैं प्रोटोकॉल के अंदर, ठीक है। मतलब कि अब आप उससे हट नहीं सकते, अदरवाइज आप अपना प्रोटोकॉल बना लो, आपको मैंने इसको किसी और तरह से करना है तो। अब ये देखो, जब आप माइक्रो सर्विसेज वगैरह यूज कर रहे होगे, फिर आप इस तरह के यूज करोगे, एक्स फॉरवर्डेड फॉर। अब आप एक सर्विस को मतलब कर रहे हो, हिट कर रहे हो, लेकिन उस सर्विस ने आगे किसी और को हिट करना है, तो वो बताएगा कि एग्जैक्टली कौन से होस्ट को जानी थी सर, ये क्या नाम है, आपकी रिक्वेस्ट क्लाइंट किस एग्जैक्टली होस्ट को करना चाह रहा था, क्लाइंट किस एग्जैक्टली जो है यूजर से सर्विस को एक्सेस करना चाह रहा है, और नेक्स्ट आपकी सर्विस ने किस किस को अलाउ किया हुआ, तो ये सारा स्टफ जो है ना वो डील करता है फिर हेडर, ठीक है। समटाइम्स आप फ्रंट एंड में एक्सपीरियंस करते हैं, समटाइम्स आप फॉर्म डाटा भेज रहे हो तो क्लाइंट साइड से, लेकिन हेडर साइड पे एक्सपेक्टेड था कि उसने एप्लीकेशन जेसन डाटा लेना था, तो वो आपको एरर शो कराया था, ठीक है। इस तरह की चीज़ें होती हैं। तो अगर कोई और क्वेश्चन है तो उसको पूछें। वर्जनिंग का आपने मेरा ख्याल है पूछा था, एक और क्वेश्चन किया था आपने मोहम्मद सुभान। आपकी आवाज़ नहीं आ रही। हाँ, पेज लिमिटिंग का पूछा था आपने, पेजिनेट का। पेजिनेट, देखो आपकी जब भी आप फेसबुक पे जाते हो या किसी भी आप प्लेटफॉर्म पे जाते हो ना, तो कोई रिसोर्स आ रहा होता है आपके पास जो कि ह्यूज अमाउंट ऑफ रिसोर्स होता है, ठीक है। पोस्ट आपके पास फेसबुक के पीछे मिलियंस ऑफ पोस्ट पड़ी हुई है, ठीक है। अब आप फेसबुक के ऊपर जाते हो, मैं बार बार फेसबुक को इसलिए कंसीडर कर रहा हूँ कि उसमें एक्चुअली मिलियंस ऑफ रिसोर्सेज हैं। तो आप फेसबुक के ऊपर जाते हो तो आपके पास एकदम से सारी पोस्ट नहीं आ जाती, ठीक है। वो क्या करता है कि वो पहले कुछ लिमिटेड पोस्ट लेकर आता है, फॉर एग्जांपल 10 पोस्ट लेकर आएगा। फिर आप थोड़ा सा स्क्रॉल करोगे, उसने स्क्रॉलिंग के ऊपर बिहेवियर लगाया हुआ है कि जब इतना स्क्रॉल कर लेगा फिर मैं अगली 10 प्रोडक्ट लेकर आऊंगा, फिर अगला कर लेगा फिर मैं अगली 10 लेकर आऊंगा। वो ये सारा करने का पर्पज इसलिए है कि अगर वो एक ही टाइम में वो सारी प्रोडक्ट्स पोस्ट ले आएगा ना, तो उससे जो वो इतना ज्यादा डाटा ट्रांसफर होना है सर्वर से क्लाइंट साइड की तरफ, तो वो नेटवर्क बैंडविड्थ कंज्यूम करेगा, ठीक है। वो उस चीज को, देर आर मल्टीपल काइंड ऑफ लाइक डिसएडवांटेजेस, एक तो नहीं है, लेकिन उनमें से चंद ये हैं। नेटवर्क बैंडविड्थ बहुत ज्यादा लगेगी, ठीक है। सेकेंडली आप ये चीज इमेजिन करो कि आप डीबी में से मिलियंस ऑफ डाटा निकाल रहे हो, फिर आप सर्वर की रैम के अंदर रख रहे हो, ठीक है। मतलब ऑब्वियसली जो हुआ है वो डिफॉल्ट टेम्परेरी तौर पे तो रैम पे गया है ना। फिर उसके बाद आपने क्लाइंट साइड पे भेजा, क्लाइंट साइड भी अब वो जो है वो सारा डाटा अपना ब्राउजर पे रख रही है रैम साइड पे, और वो तो क्रैश हो जाएगा आपका ब्राउजर, ठीक है। इस तरह की चीजों को आप एफिशिएंटली डील करने के लिए जो है ना आप पैजिनेशन को फिर यूज करते हो, कि आप डिफाइन करते हो एग्जैक्टली कि मुझे पहले मुझे 10 प्रोडक्ट्स आई थी, अब मैं 10 पोस्ट आई थी, अब मुझे 10वीं से शुरू करना है और अगली 10 लानी है, फिर मुझे 20वीं से शुरू करना है अगली 10 लानी है, 30वीं से शुरू करना है अगली 10 लानी है। तो आप इस तरह करके जो है ना आहिस्ता आहिस्ता डाटा मंगवाते हो, ठीक है। तो दैट इज ऑल अबाउट द पैजिनेशन। ठीक है, अगर किसी को और कोई बेसिक भी क्वेश्चन है तो वो पूछ सकता है, अदरवाइज टाइम तो ठीक हो ही गया बहुत ज्यादा, तो लेट्स एंड इट अप। और you may have questions in your diary or something else, we can consider it, we can like discuss it into our clan meeting। और ये जो ऊपर ऊपर का कॉन्सेप्ट होता है ना, बिगनर्स को मैं मोस्टली कहूंगा, ये जो ऊपर ऊपर का कॉन्सेप्ट होता है ना, ये जो आपको ज्यादा स्ट्रेस दे रहा होता है, यही आपकी मोस्टली लर्निंग्स बनती हैं, ठीक है। क्योंकि बिगिनर लेवल पे ही आपको पता लग जाए कि सिस्टम पूरा काम कर कैसे रहा है, तो आप चीज़ों को और अच्छी चीज़ तरह से देखते हो, आपका व्यू चेंज हो जाता है, ठीक है। तो ट्राई टू लाइक डीप डाइविंग इनटू देम, इवन मोस्ट ऑफ लाइक दो तीन तो इधर अभी होंगे जो अभी जिन्होंने बैकएंड स्टार्ट भी नहीं किया होगा, लेकिन फिर भी आपके दिमाग में वो इमेजेस आ गई थोड़ी बहुत कि अच्छा इस तरह की चीज़ें भी मैटर करती हैं, ठीक है। जब आपके व्हेन यू आर ऑन प्रोडक्शन साइड ना, और योर API is not that much efficient. So even a single query can cost you millions of dollars. ठीक है? If you are like Facebook के पूरे सिस्टम के अंदर कोई एक सिंगल क्यूरी इस तरह की लिखी गई है कि जो आपकी N+1 पे जा रही है या एफिशिएंट नहीं है, ठीक है, तो वो इट कैन कॉस्ट अ लॉट ऑफ मिलियन डॉलर्स, ठीक है, कॉस्ट। तो अब एज एन इंजीनियर वी नीड टू डिजाइन फर्स्ट एंड देन इम्प्लीमेंट। तो ये आज का सेशन उसके ऊपर था मोस्टली। हमें इन चीज़ों को पहले कंसीडर करना चाहिए एंड देन वी नीड टू इम्प्लीमेंट ऑल द स्टफ। ठीक है, रिकॉर्डिंग मैं खत्म कर रहा हूँ। अगर इफ एनीवन हैव एनी क्वेश्चन और इवन वांट टू एक्सेस द स्लाइड्स और एनी कोड, you may can contact to me on LinkedIn, or even you can contact under the comments. I will be saying that comments and will be replying actively. So here to solve your queries. Thank you so much. And again, apologies for your live for missing your live session.